We're at Widgit today, and I'm joined by Abby, Sue, and Lisa. Very kindly invited us over here to talk about Widgit. So I'm going to start with you, Abby. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your role at Widgit and how you came to work.
So my role is I'm head of marketing here at Widgit. I've been here nearly 2 years. Before that, I was working for an educational publisher and was there for 9 years. The thing that drew me to Widgit was just the level of enthusiasm that I could feel of every person I met from Widgit. Everyone deeply cares about what they do. There's a real purpose behind it, and that was the biggest draw for me.
So
I've been at Widgit for 8 years. Prior to that, I was a local education authority SEND advisor, a SENCO in a mainstream primary school, and then obviously cut my teeth in a classroom too. I've used Widgit for many years, back to writing with symbols when symbols were black and white and on a floppy disk, although most of the audience probably don't even know what a floppy disk is. So at the moment I am the head of education. So we have a team of teachers who are creating resources, delivering training, out and about at conferences, events, and talking to SENCOs and teachers throughout the country. But I am stepping down in April from that role. I am staying at Widgit for a little while longer and doing something different, but I'm handing the mantle over to Lisa.
I'm Lisa. I've been in education for 26 years and spent a lot of time as an inclusion lead, and most recently, up until about 6 months ago, as a deputy head and inclusion lead in a large primary school. I've been fortunate enough to work with Widgit for over 20 years, and I was part of the original Symbols Inclusion project back in early 2000s. And I've just seen firsthand the impact it can have on not just our pupils with SEND, but pupils in general in a mainstream setting. And that's been my real passion and why I was drawn to work at Widgit, really, because I believe in their inclusivity for all.
Amazing, thank you. So, I'm sure who wants to answer it. For a SENCO who may not be familiar, how would you describe Widgit, what it does, and why does it go beyond just communication?
So I think obviously we can just say Widgit is using visuals.
Yeah.
And we all know that using visuals is really important because some of our younger learners are visual learners until their brain kind of solidifies, if you like, between left and right. We also know that everybody processes visuals much more quickly than written or spoken text, and that our brain sees more visual than anything else. So that's where we would start and say you're using visuals to support learners in the classroom. What makes Widgit special is that they are specifically drawn, very simple icons, if you like, images that really define a concept. So you don't have any background peripheral information that's going to distract or make somebody think that something is not the actual vocabulary or concept that you're talking about. And we work very hard at Widgit to draw all of our symbols on a particular schema so that it's like a living language, it grows. So that we always give the example, for example, of a book. So a book is an image of a book. Then you have a library, which is a room where you find books. Then you have a bookshop, which is a place where you sell books. Then you have a librarian, who's somebody who works with books. And then you have somebody who is reading a book. And that same book will feature in all of those symbols, so that growth in language. So the understanding of a concept can be much more easily grasped.
And I think it's the ease of using it, isn't it? It's that you can simply type it into a document and the symbols automatically appear, and then you have that ability to select the symbol that you choose. That, you know, we could talk a little bit about correct symbolisation, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure, but I think it's the ease of use as well. For if you wanted to make an inclusive environment, you're not having to search for particular images, it's just there and available to you, and you can just be consistent across all that you do.
How big's the library?
Abby?
21,000 plus.
Wow.
Yeah, and growing.
How many new symbols do you add roughly in a year?
It depends really, doesn't it?
So we like to add symbols when we're looking at a specific resource, so it might be something seasonal or a specific topic or new resource that we're releasing. We do get requests from customers for symbols that we add. When we do projects, there are lots of symbols that are drawn that can be added at that stage. There is a slightly complex background to adding symbols to the database, so it's not as easy as just sort of drawing it and dropping it in. But we're trying to improve on that situation and add more symbols more quickly all the time.
But I think the fact that it's a slower process is because of the thought that goes into it, isn't it? Which is, you know, it's not as simple. And I've learned that I haven't been here very long at all, and I've learned so much more about the process of symbolisation and the design aspect and the thought that goes into it, which is, I think, something that's really unique to Widgit, isn't it?
Okay, so what kinds of needs or barriers can a symbol-based resource help to address in the classroom?
I think for ease of accessibility, so on a very simple level, making sure that your classroom is labelled with visuals so that things are really easy to access. You wouldn't drive along a road and have no signage, and well, you could, it could be interesting. And in the same way, if you're accessing a classroom, to be able to have equal access to everybody to find resources and easily locate things, if everything's labelled in a consistent way and then labelled consistently from class to class. So accessibility from that side. But I think in terms of accessibility, in terms of the day itself and the way that symbols can reduce anxiety. So if, for example, you had a visual timetable in the classroom that clearly shows what's going to happen through the course of the day and is used correctly, so the symbols are removed as each part has happened or an arrow is moved along or however you may do it, that reduces anxiety, not just for children who may struggle with changes or struggle with routines, but for everybody. You know, as adults, we don't tend to start our day with absolutely no idea about what's going to happen. And yet for children coming into a classroom, we expect them to just be at, you know,
Follow the flow.
Absolutely. And if you've got that visual timetable, the reduction in anxiety and that consistency, if that visual timetable is the same in every classroom, the transitions for those children or young people are so much easier.
I think that's, I just want to pick up on that point as well about there is perhaps an impression that symbols are used for those with additional needs, but very much at Widgit we believe that it's for everybody, and that we have a saying that symbols are harmful for none, supportive for many, but essential for some. And I think that's absolutely key. And if you've got them there for everybody, you're not singling out anybody to be different.
Absolutely.
So it's adaptive teaching, it's just showing inclusivity across the board for all students and pupils in classrooms.
And that impact that can have on individuals who may not want to, because you may have some children that are a bit resistant to being singled out as having a different resource that's from all of their friends. If they're just part of your everyday life, they're much more accepting of having a resource that's symbolised.
I would imagine it works really well for children in early years and for BAL pupils as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. When we had new arrivals to my setting, the first thing we presented them with was a keyring with symbols on, which would have basic needs, so toilet, break time, happy, sad, home, so they could easily communicate as soon as they arrived with us in the setting. And for the parents too, some basic communication about where they could find specific teachers, specific parts of the school. So it was invaluable really when they first joined us. But also to help with language. And that's the other purpose of Widgit too, you know, to pre-teach vocabulary. We would use Widgit symbols in my school to pre-teach vocabulary for all. So that, you know, you, as Sue said, you process visuals so easily and quickly, it helps you to retain that vocabulary that you may need to access a brand new topic. So put it there immediately.
Get into dual coding and some of the kind of the key terminology in terms of if you've got a visual and a verbal, then you're going to retain it in two different parts of the brain, and therefore you can retrieve it more easily because it's in two different areas.
And I think that's the important thing, isn't it? We're using symbols to support language development, not to replace language development.
and to reduce that cognitive load. So you are able to retain the vocabulary that you need to, so you can then use higher level thinking skills to problem solve, etc.
So, what difference will it make for students with special education needs in terms of learning and independence? You spoke about accessibility earlier, for example, going to beyond classes or whatever it is.
Yes.
What other examples do you have?
And routines. I've worked with individuals who coming into the classroom in the morning was a real challenge, and things would be everywhere, and knowing that routine, so breaking down a morning routine into hang up your coat, then you put your bag here, then you place your drink in the bottle tray, and so on, just helps ease that transition into school in the morning, having a visual routine. So I've seen that work really effectively in classrooms.
Become independent and do it in such of mobile buttoning their coat.
Exactly, yes.
Or
Yeah.
no support staff having to follow a young person around, which isn't great for either of them. And also that number of staff can be used much more effectively in the classroom if a young person is more independent and being able to access the work, either because they can find the resources that they need, or they're actually able to access the learning because the success criteria has been explained in symbols. The teacher has used symbols to support the key vocabulary. All those things are in place. That means that a young person can get on with actually what they need to do and free up some TA support to help elsewhere. Anxiety is another issue that Lisa mentioned very briefly there. So obviously when we're anxious, we don't function, our brain cannot function. So we talk about the reptilian brain at the back of the brain that takes over the central executive, and therefore if you're not processing language, dysregulation can occur, everybody can get upset, and that causes issues. But if we've got symbols that actually can filter through, if you like, that anxiety and that dysregulation, then the student is much more able to learn and be comfortable in the classroom.
And to be able to communicate what they need to become regulated. So having a visual board where they can pinpoint exactly what they need to help them to regulate is...
Got a lot of feedback from parents as well, and some of the one that hit me the most was it gave my child a voice and independence, and that's just so important, really. So.
Those things that we live for, aren't they?
Yes.
When we get that feedback. Yeah.
We had a lovely example of a parent came to speak to us recently, and she used the phrase, well, what symbols do, they help me to understand you better and you to understand me better. I just thought that was just lovely. That just summed up exactly what they thought.
The SENCOs decided to buy Widgit, implement it in their school. How can they work effectively with teachers and support staff in school to integrate it into everyday teaching?
I think it's about having a symbol-friendly ethos in school as well. We talked a bit about having it everywhere, and we've talked often about symbols by stealth, and starting to introduce symbols gradually so that people see the power and see the success, really. So even on a simple level of labelling everything initially, having a visual timetable initially, and doing it gradually. I don't think it works well or effectively if suddenly somebody comes in and just symbolises everything. You have to do it gradually. And in the same way that we introduce language gradually, this is a language too. So doing it, in a measured way. I think it's really important that people feel part of the journey. So it's not just the SENCO creating resources. We always say SENCO, not SENDO. It should be everybody is a teacher of SEND. So making sure everybody feels a part of that. And the beauty of Widgit is having a shared document system so that everybody can be contributing to making resources and having an opportunity to really own it.
I think too, you always get somebody in a school who really wants to run with it. So using their sort of enthusiasm as a symbol champion, if you like, and at the same for myself and at Lisa as well, I'm sure that you've done this. You've sort of started off some training in a staff meeting around symbols or perhaps whatever else it would be. But you're bringing in that person who's using it and saying, well, how are you using it in your classroom? Because peer to peer is always so much better in terms of engagement, getting things going in the classroom.
We have lots of training options as well. beginning levels, offer loads of inspiration as well, and examples and case studies of what's been working well in other schools. There's also loads on our website. We have so many success stories that people can delve into as well. So
there's a good template library as well, isn't there?
Yes.
Starting point.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the fear of a lot of staff, isn't it? It's basically like more work for me to do.
Mm.
Well, we understand that, you know, as I say, we're teachers,
Yeah.
and that always goes into the design of things. So there are ready-made resources. Obviously, the beauty of Widgit is about personalisation and being able to edit, so not using something off the shelf, but there are starting points. So there are ready-made resources that can then be edited for that person, use that individual. But also, as you mentioned there, we have a vast library of different templates which are all pre-formatted. And it's literally a case of typing in a word, choosing your template, typing in a word, that symbol appears. Quick double check that you've got the right symbol, so you haven't mis-symbolised cell, for example, as a prison cell when actually you wanted a biology cell or a battery cell, and away you go, ready to use.
And also on our social media accounts, we often put up top tips.
Yeah.
We're showing how to use the templates, and we also kind of share user-generated content as well, so what other people are using and creating in schools. So that's a great point to sort of have a look and get some ideas as well.
There are some pitfalls with using Widgit sometimes, especially when you're a brand new user. What kind of pitfalls have you seen? Mistakes that you've seen?
I think, as you mentioned there, you know, errors in symbolisation sometimes, you know, homophones being represented incorrectly. You know, I saw one recently where it was about clear, and they'd use sort of scientific, where actually I think what they were trying to say was to be clear in an explanation. So, you know, being a bit careful with that, but over-symbolising too. What you don't want is to create a piece of text that becomes even more confusing because you've got too many symbols within it. Everybody's got their own strategies and their own methods for doing it. I tend to, if I've written a sentence, for example, I tend to almost cover the text and look at the symbols and think, am I getting the key meaning across here? Do I need all of these to get the key meaning across? Or can I reduce that and reduce the visual clutter to just still be able to get my key meaning across? So they are there to support rather than to confuse. So I think sometimes that can be a pitfall. And I also think sometimes it's not so much in how it's applied, but the reasons. Because I sometimes think that people very much see Widgit as something for an individual pupil. And as we talked about earlier on, when Widgit works best, it's when it's integral to the teaching in general. So that it isn't seen as something standalone and different for one person. It's actually just part of everyday life. And for children, particularly older children or children who might be more self-conscious, I think if it's everywhere, they're much more accepting about using symbols in their work.
Potentially another pitfall is that people think by whacking a symbol on it, they've done the job.
Yeah.
And actually you need to be thinking about the language that you're using before you actually add symbols to that language. So taking a piece of text and just symbolising it may not be the answer. You have to think about the simplification of that language before you then add the symbols. If you've got a child who's only working at two information carrying words, it's no point giving them a sentence that's got symbols. They're still not going to understand it. So I think there's a lot of pre-thought before you actually then start to symbolise as well, particularly in the longer text-based resources. Obviously, when it's just a single word that you're teaching pre-teaching vocabulary, or tier 3 vocabulary, whatever it is, that's a fairly straightforward resource to create.
That's the key word, isn't it? It's not just putting the symbol on it, it's actually telling what the symbol is.
Yeah.
Why it's there.
Yeah. But again, the website, to talk about, we've
got our 5 golden rules on the website, so that's always a good place to start to give you that sort of beginning knowledge, and like I said, there's loads of key examples on our website as well, and all across our social media accounts to help people, and ask us as well any questions you have. The whole of the Widgit team is here to help. So
how do you see symbol-based resources sitting alongside other assistive technology that's used in schools?
A lot of our symbols actually do feature in other assistive technology. So we work very closely with Quick Software and Clicker. So you can now get symbols, widget symbols used as part of Clicker automatically. We also license our symbols into Read&Write.
Text help everyone.
Text help, by the way, yeah. So again, they're part of the picture dictionary there. They're also part of what we would call AAC devices, augmentative and assistive alternative communication devices. So they're used in terms of young people who don't actually have a voice, they're pre-verbal, but they can use that device. So the symbols are used alongside a lot of other assistive tech already to support the dyslexic and non-verbal.
What do you think the main barriers are for schools trying to overcome and adopt symbol-based communications? Apart from budget.
It's an inevitable one, isn't it?
Although I think actually in terms of tech that's out there, cost-wise, actually, which isn't, having just come out of a school where I was very much responsible for the Zen budget, actually, it isn't a big part of your budget. It's still relatively low cost for what it can actually do for the benefits. I think probably it's making sure it's convincing your staff team that it's something that's going to be beneficial for everybody and something that's going to make their life easier. We always found it was really helpful in just creating general resources, making story maps, doing anything like that you may be using in the classroom is so much easier with a system like Widgit. So if they can see a benefit generally as well as a benefit for individuals that really need it, then that's sort of something we need to really get across.
You say it's that fear of something new's coming into the classroom. I've got to find the time to spend to get to know how to use it, and it's just going to add to my workload. Whereas we would believe that actually, yes, you do need to spend a little bit of time getting to know it, and if you can spend a bit more time looking through the actual resources that are there and the templates that are there, it will save you an awful lot of time as you move through. But it is getting over that initial sort of hump and fear of, there's something new again. And we've all been there.
Oh, yeah. And we're doing a lot of work as a team, aren't we, in creating really short, focused videos. We know teachers, well, anybody working with young people are time poor. So we're trying to put together a whole series of very short videos so that when you do sit down and you forget how to do a specific thing in Widgit, you can just quickly go back and look and refresh your memory. So hopefully there'll be more of those coming soon too.
Yeah, and if anyone has any requests, just send us a
Please
message. And we'll add it to our list.
I couldn't remember how to open a new document the other day. Don't do one on
There you go.
Yes.
Added.
You said about your 5 golden rules. Now I get to test you.
I was
going to say what are your 5 tips, but what are the 5 golden rules?
So some of these we've already talked about. So obviously the obvious one would be around meaning, making sure that you've got the correct homophones, you've picked the right symbol. But examples, one of the examples that we use on the website is talking about last. So there are lots of meanings for last. So the example that's there is this his last birthday? And we're not talking about he's never going to have another one. It was the one last year. So just making sure that you've chosen the right symbol. We talk about replacing and combining text. So sometimes you can get 2 symbols coming up for a phrase where actually one is fine, it does the thing. And again, that's the bit that Lisa was talking about in terms of if I were to read it, does it make sense with the symbols, and can I actually look at what would kind of make it more simple? We've got something around pronouns. So pronouns can be very difficult for young people to understand, particularly with language difficulties. So if we were talking about Henry VIII, for example, we have a symbol for Henry VIII. We also have a symbol for he, which is representing the pronoun he. But if we're talking about Henry VIII as he, then logically it would make sense to use the symbol for Henry VIII, because that consistency, we then know what we're talking about. We're looking at meaning and simplification of language. So again, I spoke earlier on about just whacking a symbol on
doesn't work. And one of the simple ways or one of the easiest ways of simplifying language is actually to look at repetition. So looking at a paragraph and saying, how can I make this appropriate for the reading age of my individual, and then symbolising that. And then layout as well. So we're looking at sentences, only one sentence per line. Young people who are symbol users often find punctuation very difficult to understand. So if we start each new sentence on a new line, then that can make it a lot clearer for them. And again, just looking at the number of symbols. So we recommend no more than 8 symbols per sentence, and even that's a lot. So
a long sentence.
A long sentence, yes. So if you followed all of the previous rules in terms of simplification, you're unlikely to be needing to have 8 symbols, but that's a definite maximum.
Excellent. Okay, so a couple of closing questions. All right. I'm going to go to all 3 of you. What's one thing you wish every SENCO knew about symbol-based communication?
I think for me, it's the recognition that symbols can be used for inclusion for all, and not just for certain individuals. It should just be integral to your classroom.
Mine would be, I feel like there's a lot of SENCOs out there that have deep passion for what Widgit is and what we do, and so just spreading that and being confident to get it in a whole school environment, so kind of backing up what Lisa said there, and using us as well, coming to speak to us at shows, asking us questions. We're just here to help. So
I would say all of those things, but investment in time. Don't be worried about using a little bit of time at the beginning to research widget symbols and the software, because it's an investment that is well worth it in the long run. It can help you in terms of your teaching and learning, the emotional regulation and support for young people. We haven't really talked much about emotional regulation, but it's another really big one for children to be able to express how they're feeling. So use widget symbols. Use them creatively throughout your teaching, use them consistently.
Okay, so Widgit has been a supporter of SENsible SENCO for quite a while now, our community. What prompted that partnership, and why do you think it's important to support SENCOs in that way?
Having been a SENCO, having known how lonely it can be out there, and having really valued the networks that I built up when I was working in schools, and that we were able to share ideas. And I think that's what SENsible SENCO is for me. It's that group of SENCOs saying, I know what it's like out there. I know how hard it is. This might work for you. Yep. Would you like to try it? And obviously, as a company, as Widgit, we believe that Widgit does work, and therefore we want to share that with SENCOs. And if SENsible SENCO can get that message out and support everybody out there, then that's a good thing for us.
Thank you. And then this is definitely one for you, Abby. So where can SENCOs go to explore more Widgit resources and find further training and support?
So our website is the best place to go, widgit.com. You can view our products on there. You can look at all the range of training that we have available. You can also see what events and conferences we're going to be attending. Like I said, we've got a whole range of case studies also on our website, so it's a good place to have a look and explore, see what we're doing. We also have our resources section, so that's where you can have a look at what resources are available. Some you can just download straight off the website. You can go to the website to get a free trial, so you can get started off that way as well. And also, if you're not following us on socials, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're always posting on there sort of top tips, letting people know our latest news, where we're going to be, what we're doing, sharing good practice and examples as well.
What's new and upcoming for Widgit in the future, or kind of recently?
Well, we actually released a new font yesterday. I don't know, Abby, would you like to sort of say a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. So we've released a new accessible font. It's called Be Clear. And we worked with a company called Dalton Mag to develop the font. So part of that was a lot of research. So we went out to our widget users from a range of teachers, speech and language therapists, SEND specialists, people working in healthcare who also use widget, to get that wide view of what would be the best for our font. We are used by so many people in so many different situations, not just in education. And so that was quite tricky. So it was really important for us to do the research and to get all that user feedback. So once we got that in, Dalton Mag went off, created the font. There was lots of back and forth iterations. We shared those iterations with our kind of user group. And then finally we got to where we were, and we've released it yesterday. So hot off the press. If anyone wants to know more about the process or just explore it more, we've got a whole page on our website where you can watch a video which goes into detail about the research. We also have a kind of making of PDF as well, so you can actually see some of the designs and iterations.
And then, very exciting, drum roll, a departure really for Widget, but we have an app that's coming out in the next couple of months called Simbler. We're sort of terming it more as a learning app, so it's more about an individual interacting with activities on a tablet, iPad, and later on other devices, rather than a teacher, supporter, professional creating a paper-based resource for an individual to use. It's very exciting. It will encompass a lot of pre-made resources. Again, everything fully editable, and the ability for young people, for professionals to create their own as well. But covering language development, concepts, colourful semantics, so there's word building and phonics, there's sentence building, this was colourful semantics, knowledge of the world, pre-teaching vocabulary, really anything that you think you might use Widget for, you'd be able to use the app, but in an interactive way. Lisa saw it recently and
got very excited. And if you can imagine any resource that you've made as a person working with young people that you've had to create, print, laminate, chop up, spend your Sundays spending hours creating, you can make it using Simbler and replicate it for several children, maybe edit it so that you can change it to suit their individual needs, and it can be done in minutes. My daughter's 11 years old and she made the most fantastic resource in 2 minutes, changing the colours, adding her own voice. So it's really simple. I think my only frustration with it is that it didn't exist 5 years ago when I was actually needing it. So it's going to be really exciting. And the feedback that we've had from people at events has been so positive, so enthusiastic. We've got lots of people already signed up, ready to be the first users.
Wow.
we're very busy at Widget at the moment, as always.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Ladies, thank you so much for inviting us here today and talking to us about Widget.
It's been lovely to host you. Thank you.